There was a book I read a while ago by Blake Crouch. The book was called Dark Matter. In it, a physicist encounters many versions of himself as he jumps from one parallel multiverse to another, trying to find his way back home. While reading the book, I was struck with the thought that many people view the concept of parallel selves as something of a frightening concept. In fact, many people view the concept of a double, be it a clone or an alternate version of you in a different world, as something frightening, as something that diminishes who they are as individuals. I thought to record this episode of the Dark Oracle's Guide to the Multiverse in order to tackle that ideology. I've hinted at this in the past, particularly when I compared the body to a vehicle, particularly a Jeep. I spoke of having a red Jeep, and when you go to a Jeep dealership, for example, and you see that there are 5 red Jeeps, you pick one, but then there are 4 other possible drivers who can also drive the same make and model of your red Jeep. Are you the same as the drivers of those others? No, you're completely different. But externally, if you drive past that same vehicle, the same red Jeep on the road, you do look as though you're looking at a mirror copy of your vehicle. But the way you drive your car is going to differ than the way the other person who buys the same red Jeep drives it. And after a while, your red Jeep will begin to have differential capabilities and capacities compared to how another individual has chosen to take care of and drive their red Jeep. So, for example, twins, biologically speaking, identical twins are genetically comparable. However, over time, each twin begins to take on different characteristics that allows you as a person looking at the twins to differentiate between one twin and another. Maybe it's the quirky way one smiles. Maybe it's the way one chooses to part their hair. Maybe it's the dark humor of one and the light, breezy humor of the other. Biologically speaking, they are genetically identical, much like your vehicle, the red Jeep, would be identical to the other 4 red Jeeps that were left sitting in the dealership. But over time, you start to see the effect the soul has on the biological vehicle that is the body. So what I want you to do now is take that concept, these concepts, both of the red Jeep and the biological twins, and now apply that to you, yourself, and the many versions of you across the many worlds, across the multiverses. I want you to take that same concept and apply that to your understanding of who you are as an individual beyond just your soul, beyond just the body, to see how that applies to physics and the quantum world. There's one mistake that I see many fiction writers, nonfiction writers, and people who generally like to speak on the concepts of the multiverse that I feel should be addressed. If you were to ever encounter a parallel you, a you from a different universe, know that that is not you. Feel no sense of fear or dread at your own insignificance, but understand that in different worlds, there are characters, there are personas identical to you, but don't discard the contribution that your consciousness plays to differentiating you from the other yous. And what I mean by that is this. I am Anna, and in this universe, I am a particular person. I have a set of skills that I exhibit and different things that I enjoy that are as a result of not what my body determines, but the consciousness that lives within my body. In a parallel multiverse, there will be another Anna and another Anna and another Anna, which biologically speaking, genetically speaking, would look just like me. The same way a red Jeep in a Jeep dealership would look just like mine. But the vehicle is not the individual. The consciousness that operates that Anna might have a different persona. The consciousness that operates that Anna in that world might not enjoy books on physics, might not enjoy books on philosophy, might be more extroverted than I am. And so if there were some way in which I were able to pass through some sort of wormhole and interact with myself, I would feel no fear. I would feel no feelings of insignificance, like I'm nothing but a copy, simply because I don't identify with the body, and I understand that that individual in a parallel world may have the same body as me, but my consciousness, which is ever existing and has ever existed and is immortal, same as theirs, obviously, differs from them. So when a twin looks at its twin and doesn't feel that sense of who am I and that emptiness, but understands that while my twin might have the same body as I am, she is not me, I feel that same mindset should be applied when one is to think of the many versions of themselves that exist now. Not with fear, not with trepidation, not with feelings of who am I in the grand scheme of things, but just with the understanding that the human body is nothing more than a vehicle, a tool, a machine in which your consciousness uses to experience this world. Now, I know if you're a regular listener of this podcast, I am running the risk of sounding repetitive, but I understand that I have to say this repeatedly so that the concept does get sunk in. Because we live in a world where everybody, I take that back, most people go through life identifying steadfastly with the vehicle body, with the body machine. So when they look at themselves, they go, that is me. This is who I am. Even though we use words like my body, my leg, there is a word there that does separate when you say my this. But we still identify wholeheartedly with the person that we see in the mirror as though that is all that we are. And so when you read books like Dark Matter and you see this character interacting with his other selves and he sits back and he's lost in thought and thinking that, he's insignificant and, something could happen to him and it doesn't matter because across time and space there is a myriad of him and he's just an insignificant nothing. And so he, begins to lose hope. Take solace in the fact that just like I could buy a game, let's say I decide to buy Tomb Raider and I plug it into my Xbox and I play as Lara Croft. I am not the only person who has access to this video game, Tomb Raider. I am not the only consciousness that can control and play within that world as Lara Croft. Anybody else can buy the game, but I am different from the next person who buys the game, and I will play the game differently than the next person who has bought the game. And so when you think about your parallel selves, when you see movies like The One, or you read books like Dark Matter, or you watch shows like Rick and Morty, and they tackle the concept of parallel selves, and they say things like, you're insignificant and nothing matters because across space and time, there are other versions of you. Yes, there are, if you stop at that point. But if you understand that all that we are players in a simulation, existing and playing in this world a character, a persona that, yes, another consciousness in a parallel world could also play. But that consciousness differs from you because your vehicle body isn't the real you. Your consciousness is the real you. I hope I'm making sense. I hope that the next time when you sit and you think about time and space and parallel worlds, or the next time you watch a sci-fi movie that delves on the topic and tries to make it seem as though any version of you that's out there is a version of you that is sort of diminishing your capacity as an individual. You take a step back and you think about the concepts of purchasing a video game, and you think about the concepts of consciousness, and you understand that what we are right now are consciousness having a human experience. In one of my earlier episodes of the the Dark Oracle's Guide to the Multiverse, I talk about that. I talk about this being a highly advanced simulation created by a futuristic society that has conquered famine and hunger and work and all these things, and have nothing else left to do than to play a life in which things die because they're, in a sense, immortal. And take that concept now is what I want you to do, is to take that concept and spread it across and look at every parallel multiverse or parallel universe, not as something that discredits you as an individual, but as just different servers or a different CD or a different console in this simulated reality that we call life. So this was a fun episode. It's short, but direct and to the point. I've been actually wanting to do this for a while. But the whole concept behind it is to just make sure that you aren't 100% identified with the persona that you see when you look in the mirror, that you understand that you're just playing a character, right? Like I love to think about when I'm done playing as Anna, what other personas I will choose to embody, in which worlds I will choose to exist within. Or in the past, before playing as Anna, what other characters had I played in before? So assuming we look at Earth as the name of the game, and each civilization being playable, one could play in 1700s Europe, or ancient Rome, or in the ancient Egypt, or all these different, you could play as a Native American civilization. All these different history eras throughout history contain playable personas. And I think that explains why people who are born now feel like they're born in the wrong time. Some people I've spoken to have told me that they feel like they should have been born in the 1960s because they feel like that's where their soul feels more identified with. And my response to that is, well, perhaps you just got off playing a character that existed during the 1960s, and you've brought some of that persona, some of the characteristics of that persona that you played as into this world now, into the 2019, 2020 civilization or timeline as our present time. Another concept that people should think of is that kind of enlarges the mind and makes one think of all the different possibilities is in these parallel worlds where you can play in this world where we have a leader that is like a Donald Trump, but then there is another world where we have a leader that is like a Hillary Clinton. And perhaps when you're done playing in this reality and kind of seeing what happens here, you can log off and come back and play in a parallel reality where a different president won. There are an infinite amount of possibilities in this simulation that we are currently experiencing. An infinite amount of possibilities, and not just limited to Earth. There are other worlds in which your consciousness can also exist in, and other personas that are non-human. And I'm not saying that you can come back as a goat or a cow or a lion. I'm saying you could come back as what we would particularly call a gray or an extraterrestrial character. So these are things to think about. These are food for thought. I would recommend you check out the book Dark Matter. But when you read it with the mindset that I've presented to you now, and challenge the author in your mind, obviously, as you're reading it. And when you watch sci-fi shows and they show, parallel selves, understand that what they're depicting is something small, because it shows a mindset that wants the viewers to identify too readily to the body. That's part of the game. The game is supposed to feel realistic. You are supposed to feel as though this is you, and that's the only you that ever will be. And that if you were, by some odd explanation, were to interact with another version of you in a parallel world that somehow diminishes who you are, you're supposed to not see your immortal consciousness. You're supposed to be so involved in the game as to completely disregard who you are outside of the persona. That is part of the game. That's what the game does to you. But if you've stumbled across this podcast, perhaps your consciousness that is playing as your persona just wanted a little hint, just wanted a little reminder. There are no coincidences. This didn't happen by accident. You are not listening to this without purpose. So here's your reminder. You are not the body. You are an immortal consciousness having a quantum physical simulated experience in this world called Earth, in this game called life. Thank you for listening to the Dark Oracle's Guide to the Multiverse.